Fellas, welterweight is the best division in the UFC. People like to say that lightweight and bantamweight is the best in the UFC, but I feel like nowadays welterweight is by far the best. I mean, first of all, just look at the contenders that you've got at the top of the welterweight division. It's straight heat, and I feel like this is the best group of top contenders in any division. For example, you've got Sean Brady, 18-1 with that only loss being to Belal Muhammad. He's 50-45 Gilbert Burns, dominated and submitted Leon Edwards, manhandled and submitted Kelvin Gastelum. He's one of the best grapplers in the welterweight division. He's on an absolute streak since losing to Belal. Massively improved, beat Leon better than anybody has before. He's even won a grappling match against Craig Jones as well, which shows the level of grappler that Sean Brady is. Then you've got Kamaru Usman, obviously the former champion. Most would call him the second greatest welterweight of all time. Was on a massive winning streak, including this title reign. And then he takes 3 losses, but you really look at those 3 losses. He got knocked out in a fight that he was absolutely dominating for at least 3 rounds. He then loses a close decision to Leon Edwards, and then on short notice in a different weight class, arguably beats Khamzat Chimaev on short notice. And he just recently fought Joaquin Buckley, who was on a winning streak as well as a favourite, and again dominated Joaquin Buckley, exposed the wrestling of Buckley, and just took him down, manhandled him for at least 5 rounds straight, and he has 5 wins over current ranked contenders. You've also got Ian Garry, 16-1 with that only loss being to Shavkat himself. He shut down MVP, blasted Neil Magny, outstruck Jeff Neal, knocked out Daniel Rodriguez, and in his most recent fight, he took on Carlos Prates on short notice, the scariest striker in the division, and outstruck Carlos Prates for 25 minutes. People said he's going to have to resort to grappling. He lit him up on the feet for 25 minutes, got the win over Carlos Prates. You've also got Shavkat Rakhmonov, 19-0, 18 finishes, which is one of the best, I guess, statistics you've got in the UFC right now. He's choked out Jeff Neal, choked out Wonderboy, choked out Magny, beat Ian Garry as well when Garry was undefeated. He's got, like I said, one of the best statistical records in the UFC right now. And even though he's injured, he's probably going to be out for some time, he's probably the most promising contender. If I had to rank the contenders in the welterweight division, Shavkat will probably be the top of the list. And now you've got Michael Morales, 18-0, undefeated, knocked out Neil Magny, just knocked out Gilbert Burns. He's absolutely ginormous as well for the 170 division. He looks like a middleweight. So you look at the contenders we've got now in the welterweight division. I don't see any division that has contenders even close to this. It's straight fire. All of them are on. All of them are not necessarily on win streaks, but all of them are, looking fire right now. You've got JDM as well as the champion, who's undefeated in the UFC, and he's a fun-ass champion, one of the most entertaining champions in the UFC right now. And he's about to fight Islam Makhachev, who's also on a roll, pound for pound #1. JDM versus Makhachev. Apart from maybe 1 or 2 super fights here and there, if this takes place this year, this is immediately one of the best fights of 2025. Pound for pound #1, moving up a weight class as he deserved to against JDM, who's undefeated in the UFC, just destroyed Belal Muhammad. This is one of the best fights of 2025 in the welterweight division. And you look at the contenders to back it up as well. Such a great title picture. And then you've got the other contenders as well. And what I mean by the other contenders is the guys like Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad, Joaquin Buckley, Colby Covington. Now, these guys are not top contenders. They're not going to be getting a title fight soon. They're probably not going to be matched up against the contenders that I just went over, but they're still in the mix. For example, you've got Leon Edwards, former welterweight champion, got dominated by Belal and Sean Brady, but technically he's still a contender around the mix. You've got Belal Muhammad, who was literally a champion a couple of months back and just lost to JDM, but again, kind of still in the mix. He's 36 years old though. You've got Joaquin Buckley, who was on a promising run in the welterweight division, takes a loss to Kamaru Usman, and you've got Colby Covington, who's fought for the belt 3 different times, lost all of them, and has just lost to Joaquin Buckley. But these are the guys who I'd say aren't really the next generation of welterweights. These guys, I mean, Joaquin Buckley kind of is, but he just lost to Usman. But they're the other contenders in the division. And I think one more win for any of these guys, and they're straight back in there with the likes of Usman, with the likes of Morales, with the likes of Brady, and all the other contenders. And then you look at the rest of the ranked fighters in the welterweight division. Number 10, Gilbert Burns, who's just giving us free highlight reels for the end of his career. Number 11, Jeff Neal, who I think is the second best boxer in the welterweight division, outside of JDM. Jeff Neal's got some of the most crisp boxing in this division, lights people up on the feet most of the time, hits very hard as well, some underrated power, lit up Shavkat when they fought. One of the best boxers, honestly, in the UFC, but at least in the welterweight division. Another good contender. Number 12, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, the nicest motherfucker in the UFC. And even though I guess you can call him washed nowadays, when it's him against another guy in a pure striking matchup where he doesn't have to worry about the grappling, he's one of the best kickboxers in the division. Again, I know he's fallen off, I know he's past his prime, but a peak Stephen Wonderboy performance, like the one where he lit up Kevin Holland. Number 12, Wonderboy Thompson, another great contender. You've got Carlos Prates at number 13, who was on a massive winning streak leading up to the Ian Garry fight, pretty much only finishes. Probably the most dangerous striker, or one of the most dangerous strikers, not only in the welterweight division, but in the entirety of the UFC, has that touch of death. Was seconds away from finishing pushing Ian Gary in that fight. If he'd just gone for it a little bit more, I really do feel like he would have got Ian Gary out of there. Another great contender. Number 14, Kevin Holland, just a definition of a kill or be killed fighter. Sometimes you're going to see Kevin Holland go out there and absolutely slump people. You're going to make him look like he's title worthy, and then another performance is going to get absolutely dominated, but he's an entertaining fighter, you can't deny. Another great contender. And then number 15, MVP. Some people actually make the debate that he's the greatest striker or the best striker in the UFC right now. Slick on the feet, outclasses even some of the best strikers, like he did to Ian Gary, like he did to Kevin Holland, like he did to Sharpwood and Magomedov. One of the most interesting and unique strikers in MMA right now. Again, another great contender. So is this the most exciting the division has been? We've got one of the best title fights on the horizon. We've got some of the best contenders this division has ever had. All of them look promising. And then we've got other contenders as well in the back who can still work themselves back up. And then you look at the rest of the ranked fighters. Again, the top 15 of welterweight right now is absolutely booming. And I think it's easily the best top 15 in the UFC. You go back even just 2-3 years ago when Leon Edwards was the crusty champion, and you look at the top contenders, there was absolutely nothing exciting about any of the contenders. Most of them were just washed up fighters. I mean, you look at the welterweight rankings of July of 2023, the only promising fresh contender was Khamzat Chimaev, and he's now moved division to the middleweight division. And a lot of people like to make the debate that lightweight is the best. It's considered the best division in the UFC. Well, let's break down the lightweight top 5 right now. Makhachev's already said that he's moving to welterweight. He's joining the gang. He's going to be taking on JDM. Arman Tsarukyan's just disappeared from the sport, pulled out due to a so-called back injury, and he's nowhere to be seen. Dustin Poirier is going to be retiring after his next fight. Justin Gaethje's being a soppy idiot and demanded a title fight or is going to retire even though he's undeserving. Max Holloway's just been knocked out. Like, look at the title fight between Topuria and Oliveira. One of the best title fights coming up in the UFC. Can't wait for this. Then what? Then what happens in the lightweight title picture? The winner of Holloway and Poirier? Well, Holloway's already been slept by Ilia Topuria, and Poirier is going to retire after that fight. You can say Tsarukyan, but Dana White already said Tsarukyan needs to earn it, and Tsarukyan hasn't got any fight booked, and he's been out since, what, for UFC 300 now. Justin Gaethje, he's undeserving. Nobody wants to see him fight for a belt, and he's already been shocked out by Charles Oliveira. Paddy Pimblett, I mean, that's reaching as well. I can see the rivalry between Ilia and Paddy, but he's got one ranked win against Michael Chandler. There's zero other big contender fights at 155, and you can say that lightweight's pure violence, it's pure fun. So you're right about that, but so is welterweight. Look at some of the most recent contender fights. Edwards versus Brady. Brady absolutely dominated Leon Edwards, and to top it off, got a finish. One of the best, like one of the most interesting grappling performances we've had this year. You've had Usman versus Buckley, what we just had. Usman just absolutely dominating Buckley across 25 minutes. Both of them exchanging on the feet, especially in the 5th round. Muhammad versus JDM. I never thought I'd say this, but Belal Muhammad involved in an absolute scrap and a potential fight of the year contender. One of the best title fights this year. Morales versus Burns. First round KO from Michael Morales. The only real boring contender fight we've had between welterweights recently was Ian Gary and Shavkat at UFC 310. And not to mention some of them over the years, like Belal versus Brady, Gary versus Protez, Shavkat versus Jeff Neal, Burns versus JDM. Welterweight, if you look at the contenders, you look at the fights, you look at everything into account, it is the king. It is the best division in the UFC as of right now. However, I will say, welterweight has one minor flaw. It's only a little one that's holding it back, and it is the lack of upcoming prospects. In every division in the UFC, there's usually a bunch of unranked prospects or upcoming guys that you can look forward to, potentially the next generation that are close to being ranked. Welterweight doesn't really have that. Like, you had Brian Battle, who was at the kind of the front of the pack for unranked welterweights. He's now just been moved to middleweight to fight Ruziboyev. Auburn Elliott, who's going to be fighting this weekend, he's on a bit of a run, but he's a very average fighter. He struggles to dominate cans. I don't think he makes it to the top 15. Randy Brown, I know he's really talented. He's probably the best unranked welterweights, but he's very chinny, and he's lost so many times in the UFC and been finished so many times in the UFC. Rinat Fakhretdinov is robbing unranked fighters like Carlos Leal and Nicholas Dalby. His best win is Kevin Lee. I think the only hope for prospects in the welterweight division is Jacoby Smith. He's going to be in the top 5 in the future, mark my words. So watch out for Jacoby Smith. He's actually fighting next week as well. And I'd also say, on top of the lack of upcoming prospects, potentially it has an issue of too many contenders. A lot of divisions suffer from not having enough. I think welterweight has too many. For example, you've got JDM as the champion. The most deserving contender, I think most people would agree, is Shavkat Rakhmonov. He was supposed to fight for a belt. Belal pulled out. He went and beat Ian Gary instead. And you've also got Usman, Brady, and Ian Gary, who are all one win away from a title fight. But considering all these contenders, Makhachev's moving up and he's going to be next. So theoretically, let's say Makhachev versus JDM is going to be late 2025, October, November, December, and JDM beats Makhachev. And they book Shavkat versus Usman, and they book Gary versus Brady. And let's say Shavkat and Brady win. one of either Shavkat or Brady is going to have to sit out for a year, because who does JDM fight after that? You can't do match Shavkat versus Brady, because at that point they would have both earned a title fight. It's confusing. There's too many contenders, I think, at the top of the welterweight division, but it's still looking fun. And if I had to match make the welterweight division, if I had to put these guys into fights, the first fight I would make would be JDM. You already know what's coming. Islam Makhachev. It's one of the best fights you can make of 2025. It's the pound for pound #1 versus welterweight champion who looks unstoppable. Both of these guys are on massive runs. JDM's undefeated in the UFC. Makhachev, apart from getting knocked out by Pantoja, is on a massive run as well. So JDM, Makhachev, easy super fight for the welterweight division. We haven't really had any super fights this year. If you count Topuria versus Oliveira, which we've got next week, I guess that's one. But outside of that, there's not really any mega fights. This would be one of them. JDM, Makhachev, no-brainer. Potential card for this could be the UFC 321 main event. Maybe you do it in Australia. Maybe you do it in Abu Dhabi. For Belal Muhammad, the former champion, I'd put him against Kamaru Usman. I think this makes sense for the amount of times these guys have been exchanging online. It's one of the biggest and most heated rivalries right now in the welterweight division. So purely for the fact that we'd see these guys going at it in the press conference that these guys could have, I think you've kind of got to make Belal Muhammad versus Kamaru Usman. Usman is one fight away from a title fight. Belal Muhammad needs to fight down. They're both former champions. They both dislike each other. Both wrestlers. Both fought Leon Edwards. Usman, Belal Muhammad. I think it's an easy no-brainer fight to do, maybe for like a pay-per-view comment event. I'd want this on a pay-per-view just so we could see the press conference, because I feel like they'd really go at it. So Belal, Usman, get that done. And then for Shavkat, I haven't forgot about Shavkat. He's likely to be out until early 2026, so it's kind of hard to match make Shavkat. I've got two scenarios. First scenario, fight Belal Muhammad if he beats Usman. If you do Belal Muhammad versus Usman and Belal beats Usman, Belal's not going to get a title fight. Him and Shavkat, the reschedule of that fight. Get that done. Or scenario 2, fight the loser of JDM and Makhachev. If JDM takes on Makhachev, let's say Makhachev beats JDM versus Shavkat. Shavkat's last fight before a title fight. Two scenarios for Shavkat, I haven't left him out. Sean Brady, I think a fight that makes sense is Sean Brady versus Ian Gary, which I think would be the official title eliminator of the welterweight division. The winner of this fight would get a title fight next. Brady, I mean, they're both very similar. Brady's beating everybody apart from one top guy in Belal Muhammad. Apart from that, he's smoking everyone. Same for Ian Gary, beating everybody in the division apart from one top guy in Shavkat Rakhmonov. They're both one fight away from a title fight. You've got one of the best grapplers who's dominating people in the welterweight division versus one of the best strikers who's beating people in the welterweight division. Ian Gary's recently called out Sean Brady, saying he's willing to fight him, which I respect. So Ian Gary versus Sean Brady, title eliminator. I think a potential card could be the UFC 319 main card. I've heard rumors it's going to be on UFC 319 as well. So two top contenders in a #1 contender fight, Brady versus Gary. Leon Edwards, the former champion that people have forgotten about. I think for Leon Edwards, a fight that makes a lot of sense is Michael Morales. Leon Edwards, he's been getting nothing but grapplers recently. Brady, Belal, Covington, Usman twice in a row. I think he needs to step down in competition, away from the contenders, away from the title picture, and he needs a striker. Welcome Michael Morales, the guy who's just slumped Gilbert Burns, one of the most dangerous and one of the best up-and-coming strikers we've got right now in the welterweight division. I think a pure striking matchup, Leon Edwards, Michael Morales, because then Leon doesn't have, but then we can really see Leon showcase his striking, because I do kind of feel bad for him. He's been getting nothing but killers in the grappling department recently. Let's give him Michael Morales, a pure striker, and same for Morales. You know, we're not throwing him in the deep end. We're throwing him against a guy who's 0-2 in his last two fights. If Morales can beat Leon Edwards, he's in the top 5. He's potentially a fight away from a title fight. Edwards, Morales, get that done. Potential card, any pay-per-view main card. I don't really want to see it as a fight night main event. I don't think they'd do Leon in London back to back to back. Well, he fought in Manchester, but you know what I mean. So and that's what I do for Leon Edwards. Joaquin Buckley, who just lost to Usman. I think him and Jeff Neal make sense. I said this in the matchmaking video after UFC Atlanta. This makes sense. You know, Joaquin Buckley just lost to Kamaru Usman. Jeff Neal's coming off a win over Rafael dos Santos. And I think it'll be a fun fight. An explosive, athletic freak in Joaquin Buckley with power in his hands against, like I said before, one of the best boxers in the welterweight division in Jeff Neal. An athletic freak versus a polished boxer. I think this will be a really fun fight. Joaquin Buckley, Jeff Neal, winner gets himself back into contendership talks. A potential fight could be a fight night main event. Maybe not in the Apex, you know, just a fight night main event in whatever arena you want to do it, whatever. I guess it'll obviously be in the USA. Joaquin Buckley, Jeff Neal, get that done. Then for Colby Covington, again, one of the more forgotten welterweights, and for good reason. Him and Kevin Holland makes ultimate sense. Kevin Holland just called out Colby Covington after his recent win at UFC 316, and Covington needs to fight down. We can't give him top contenders or anybody close to the title picture now. And on top of that, the build-up, the press conference between Kevin Holland and Colby Covington. I think it would be amazing. If you put these guys against each other on a press conference, they'd be going at each other, they'd be trash talking. You've got an inconsistent wrestler in Colby Covington versus an inconsistent striker. One of the more inactive fighters in the UFC versus one of the most active fighters in the UFC. Covington, Kevin Holland, I think everything into account makes sense. And I think it's also a chance for Colby Covington to get an easy way for Kevin Holland to get into the top 10. So Covington, Holland, get that done. Potential card, just any pay-per-view main card so we can see the press conference. Gilbert Burns, I would like to see him against Auburn Elliott if Auburn Elliott can win this weekend. Auburn Elliott's obviously going to be fighting this weekend, and I assume he's going to win. If not, that's a huge fraud check. I assume he's going to beat the Dana White Contender Series debut, and if he does win that, he's going to be 4-0 in the UFC, potentially 2 finishes as well, and he's the only upcoming welterweight we've really got right now. And considering that Gilbert Burns has not lost once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 in his last 4 fights, he's been finished in 2 of them. I don't want to see Gilbert Burns against any contenders, any ranked fighters. He's going to have to fight outside the rankings if he wants to stay. And I think Auburn Elliott, who would be 4-0 at the time in the UFC, makes a ton of sense. Burns versus Elliott, I think potential card could be any fight night main card, for example. Do a fight night in a crowded arena. The co-main event or the featured fight could be Gilbert Burns versus Auburn Elliott. Makes a ton of sense. And then for Carlos Prates, I love this fight so much, and I hope the UFC make it. Carlos Prates versus Randy Brown. This is straight heat. This is one of my favorite fights I've got on this list. 2 lanky, powerful strikers known for knockouts. Carlos Prates, one of the most dangerous dudes in the UFC right now. Randy Brown, probably the most dangerous unranked welterweight right now, sleeping every prospect. Carlos Prates, known for his KO ability and his lanky striking ability. Randy Brown, known for his KO ability and his lanky striking ability. I think this would be fireworks. There's no way this makes it past the first round. I definitely lean towards Prates winning this fight because Randy Brown's known for having a bad chin, but you can't count Randy Brown out. He's only really lost recently to the best, like JDM and Belal Muhammad, and that loss to Brian Battle was arguably a robbery. So that's just my thoughts on the welterweight division, a bit of matchmaking as well. It's the best division in the UFC right now. Let me know if you agree or if you have any other takes, but that's my thoughts on welterweight. Thank you for watching.